All right. Last week, I was given the opportunity to interview two of the Army's future leaders, and I was pretty excited to get the chance to do it. Part 1, take 1. To start off, tell me a little about yourself.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Catherine. Je suis une étudiante à l'Université de Georgetown et j'aime courir, explorer la nature et collaborer avec mes amis.
People often complain that each generation is different, and older generations joke that they just don't understand the younger ones, like they're speaking a completely different language. We here on the show know how important it is to understand what youth today are thinking and doing, because, quite simply, they are the future leaders of our Army and our country. So in today's episode, we're going to speak to 4 future leaders, 2 current cadets from ROTC and 2 from JROTC, and get their thoughts on a wide number of topics, ranging from how they got involved to their thoughts on Army recruiting, to topics like climate change, social media, and AI. And their responses? Not what we were expecting. The chats were so interesting and insightful that we decided to turn it into 2 episodes. And today we'll be playing part 1 for you. But don't worry, today's conversation will be completely in English, I think.
Hello, my name is Kyle Fernandez, and welcome to Army Matters.
Hello, my name is Catherine Blotevogel, and welcome to Army Matters.
I'm Carrie Varohaikis, and this is Army Matters.
Hello, everyone. I'm LaSharon Duncan, one of the senior producers at AUSA. Normally, we jump into an episode with our 2 hosts, General Smith and SMA Daly. But since this is the first of a special 2-part episode talking to future leaders of the Army, we felt it was only appropriate to have the youngest of our team guide us through this episode. And well, that's me. So let's get into it by meeting the 4 cadets who General Smith and I chatted with. First off, we met with 2 high school students, both going into their senior years, who are members of JROTC.
All right, so my name is Jake Witt, and I'm from Conroe High School, Texas. So that's just north of Houston. And this is actually my first year in junior ROTC.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay. And you're a junior or a senior in high school?
I'm upcoming senior.
Upcoming senior. Okay, great. Okay, how about you, sir?
All right, my name is Easten Jenn. Currently, I live at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii.
Nice.
Leilehua High School. This is my 3rd year, soon to be 4th year, because summer break of JROTC, and up and coming senior.
Jake and Easton are both young, but we came away impressed with their sage-like insights, which you'll hear in a moment. Separately, we sat down with the top 2 ROTC cadets. The first was Catherine Blotevogel, who's in her early 20s studying in college.
I currently attend Georgetown University, and I'm part of the Hoya Battalion. I'm from Jefferson City, Missouri. I was born and raised there.
Alongside Catherine was Kyle Fernandez, the oldest of the group. In his early 30s, he enlisted over a decade ago and is now taking part in ROTC's Green to Gold program.
I attend Bowie State University, and my major, as I'm wrapping up, is communications. I'm originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, if you're familiar with The Office, that's what they refer. I joined the military back in 2008, have been serving ever since.
One of the first things we learned about each of these future leaders is how family influenced their view of the Army and military, as well as their decisions to consider becoming a cadet. First off, Catherine from the Georgetown ROTC spoke about her grandfather.
So my grandfather passed away a few months ago.
Yeah.
My grandfather loved stories. He really had trouble speaking at the end of his life. And so one thing that we really encouraged him to do was to write down his stories.
Okay.
And he has just some crazy stories. He was in Korea for a while, working on the Mosquito planes.
So he was a Korean War vet?
Yes, sir. He was Air Force.
He was Air Force. We like Air Force people on this show, too. So again, thinking about that, let's pull that thread a little bit. So what was his impact on you making the decision to eventually join ROTC? Did that have any impact?
I think that for me, growing up, military service was always kind of at the periphery. I knew that it existed. I knew that my uncle was in the Navy. I knew that my grandpa was in the Air Force. And I knew that it was an option and that some people that I know in high school are going to enlist or become officers.
Yeah.
But growing up, it was never a huge part of my life.
Right.
Although having family in the military wasn't really a deciding factor for me to join the military, since deciding to join, I think that it's definitely brought out a lot more pride and a lot more just family respect to hear my grandpa tell his stories.
JROTC cadet Jake from Texas was inspired not by a grandparent, but rather an older brother.
So Jake, you have a brother that's stationed in Germany and he's in the military. Can you tell us what he does?
He's infantry. So he went in, I think, after he graduated in 2021, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. As soon as he graduated basic, he got sent to Germany. And he was there for a little while, and he's actually back now. He came back last year. Okay. And so he's in Georgia now.
So he deployed in support of probably some stuff that was going on in Poland. His unit was probably there supporting that. So, yeah. So what did you think about, did that change your view about the military at all with seeing your brother enlist? What changed when you saw him when he came back?
Whenever I went to like his graduation from basic, it honestly kind of inspired me.
Really?
Yeah, I think it inspired me a lot. Because before that, I didn't really know exactly what college I wanted to go to or what I wanted to do.
Right.
But after seeing like what he had done, I mean, he was just graduating basic, but even just that, it kind of inspired me to follow like a military path.
Okay.
Overall, even though that's the Army and I want to go in the Air Force, but either way, it's both of that. And then him going to Germany, like right off the bat, I was like, I want to travel too.
Okay.
If I look at all of his friends, what they're doing and then what he's doing, he's experienced so much more in like the year while some of them haven't really done much at all. So,
yeah.
And Easten from Hawaii told us about his father winning a bronze medal and how that impacted him.
So he doesn't like to talk about it much, but the plaque in his glass case with a bunch of stuff in it says it was for saving people during a firefight. I don't remember if it was actions he made during combat or calling in medevacs, but he earned a Bronze Star.
Tell our listeners what that means.
He deploys in with infantry and ground troops. And from my understanding, he talks to the pilots.
Yes.
If you need strafes, he's the guy who calls those in. Medevacs, he calls those in. Bomb drops, anything that involves aircraft from on the ground.
Right. So he's like bringing the Air Force assets to help the ground force accomplish the mission.
He brings them all together.
Okay, great.
You hear about people on TV and the stories they do, but then you're talking to your dad and you're like, this is the guy that I see stubbing his toe in the morning because he can't see where he's going. Or I joke with him about how he's all his hair's getting white. But he did all the cool stuff that you see on TV that people get honored for, and it's a weird feeling.
Despite having a hero in his household stubbing his toe, Easten had very little interest initially in joining ROTC, or frankly anything having to do with the military. That was until...
So I had a friend who really wanted to do it but didn't want to go alone.
Okay.
And because my dad was military, I was going through a rebellious stage. I said, not a chance.
Not a chance.
Not happening. No way. I'd rather take art class, and I can't. And
Easten, you say you would rather take art class in junior ROTC?
That was what I thought in middle school.
Okay.
Then she dragged me out one day. I was tricked. I was informed we were going to Panda Express.
Okay.
We ended up at I don't know if it was a drill competition or people just showing off, but I saw color guard, armed exhibition, so spinning rifles.
Right.
the spinning rifles is what got me.
And Jake was introduced to JROTC by his brother, who had an interesting reason for joining.
My first ever hearing about it was from my brother, so you'll find a common theme. I hear.
So your brother was in our junior ROTC first?
He was.
Okay.
He was in it. It's actually kind of funny, the reason why he was in. So he's dyslexic.
Okay.
So my mom called the school whenever she heard that he had to take Spanish class. She was like, he can barely learn English. So she pulled some strings and had him do JROTC instead of taking Spanish. So he just did it for 1 year, even though it should have been 2 since Spanish is 2 years.
Right.
That's whenever I first kind of heard about it. I saw him in the uniform and everything. As I was coming into my junior year, I was thinking of like the Air Force Academy and how I can get some connections and start like introducing myself into this field. And so I just figured that joining JROTC would be the best thing for me to do, just to get more involved and get some connections to help me with my like application process.
Right. You guys are way smart. I'll just tell you real quick. I joined ROTC in high school long time ago because we had to. It was mandatory for all the kids in our high school at the 9th grade. And so after 1 year, you could choose whether or not you wanted to stay in the program. And I just decided to stay in the program.
The Defense Prisoner of War and Missing in Action Accounting Agency is dedicated to building a reckoning of our missing heroes. Join us online at dpaa.mil for the Korean Cold War Government Briefing, August 17 through 18 in Arlington, Virginia. Discover their mission to account for the missing and bring answers to their families.
And back to Georgetown's Catherine, whose grandfather served in the Korean War. She wasn't involved in JROTC in high school, but after graduating, started looking around to figure out how she could achieve her dreams.
I went to high school. I did normal high school things. I was on the cheer team. I was on the debate team. And then when senior year was wrapping up, I really decided that I had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew that college was in my future, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided to take a gap year and just do some national service.
Okay.
I joined AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, FEMA Corps, which basically just means I was part of a group of 10 individuals that worked for AmeriCorps, and then we traveled around with FEMA and responded to disasters. So over the 9 months I was in the program, I lived in 5 different states in Puerto Rico, responding to disasters. This was when Hurricane Florence happened, Hurricane Michael, and then we were still in recovery for Hurricane Irma and Maria.
Wow.
While I was there, I met a couple retired Army guys that had gone into FEMA afterwards as their civilian career.
Right.
So I knew that I wanted to do some sort of international, service-based, probably dealing with some crisis management, project management, something in that realm. And then as I was in FEMA Corps talking to these retired Army veterans, I realized that the jobs they were describing and their stories from when they were in the service were the jobs that I had been dreaming about for all of my childhood.
Right.
And this was around the time that I was applying to some of these more expensive schools that I knew I wouldn't be able to afford if I got into. And so that was just kind of the natural progression of, I think I want to join the military. I think it has the opportunities that I want to do. And they have some really great opportunities to help me fund my school if I go to a bigger name private university.
And Kyle, the eldest in the group, was inspired by a specific event.
So this may come off as a little bit cheesy, but I promise it's genuine. So my birthday is actually September 11th.
No way. 2001?
No.
Okay.
1990.
All right. Okay. All right. Like, okay.
Yeah. So actually, I never knew that my birthday was 9/11, ironically. But
right.
Yeah. So I was in 6th grade. I'm sure everybody remembers where they were. And, you know, I go home and essentially I'm an 11-year-old kid with his birthday ruined.
Mm-hmm.
From kind of that point on, I did have an interest. Like the military kind of caught my eye. I read a lot as a kid, you know, still do to this day, but like the concept of serving your country. Even in some countries, it's mandatory 2 years. So really, I would say from honestly probably 12 to 15 years old, I was like, well, I'll at least do a contract.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anyone who served. It was just something that I knew that I wanted to do. I was very passionate about doing. And for a while there definitely was that thought of like, these fools messed up my birthday.
Yeah. Yeah, my birthday is September 13th, so I can relate.
You're right there, sir.
Yeah, I'm very close. Not as close as you, but they're definitely right there.
And now that they're each in the programs, how do they describe it to those on the outside who have little to no idea what they actually do? First off, we heard from Jake, the Texas JROTC cadet.
The first thing that everyone thinks, that's in high school at least, whenever they hear JROTC, is they think military, they think that we get yelled at, they think that we're getting like hazed every single day. So that's just always what I like to clear up first of all, because that's not at all what it is. I like to explain it as making sure that we know what we're going to do after high school. My instructors specifically like to make sure that we know where we're going, whether that's college or trade school or to the military, if that's what we want to do. And I know you brought up the National Honor Society, and I think that's a good thing to bring up because it's kind of similar in the fact that it's just making sure that we're all we all have an idea of like what we're doing and find a place to be like in the community, because National Honor Society, as I'm a member of it, likes to focus on like community service and making sure you're involved.
And how about Catherine? How does she explain ROTC to everyone?
So I typically explain that it's a scholarship program where I participate as a student, and then I have this kind of side job of military training. And then after my 4 years here, I'm going to go on to do 4 years active duty. And it's just kind of my guaranteed job after I'm done with school. I typically explain it in the scholarship sense because I think that makes a lot of sense for people, for me to say, well, I got 4 years of tuition assistance, and then after that, I'm going to give 4 years back to the Army, maybe more, depending on how that goes. And then for people that I'm really close with and, really want to know what I do day to day, I just kind of explain that it's a little bit of physical training, and then it's a lot of just learning how to become an officer. And my side job is acting as a cadet officer for these other cadets.
Catherine referred to her closest friends, and friendship actually was something that all 4 cadets mentioned, specifically friendships gained through their cadets programs. Catherine, when asked about some of her best experiences, talked about early morning adventures.
Something that we haven't really touched on much today is how much the mundane parts of life bring you together with some of your friends. It turns friends or acquaintances or teammates into really, truly your best friends.
So give us an example. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we had to do a 12-mile ruck this semester.
A road march.
Yes.
You walked for 12 miles.
Yes.
With something on your back.
Yes, 35 pounds.
35 pounds. Okay. All right, go ahead.
I was in charge of planning and facilitating that.
Okay.
However, we had to wake up at 2:00 in the morning to get to our formation at 2:45.
Okay.
So that we could begin the road march by 3:15.
Wow.
So it is the dead of night, pitch black. I think I probably went to bed at midnight the night before.
Right.
This is not something that normal college students probably would ever think to do.
Right.
But I was stationed at a turnaround point, just counting cadets, making sure that we had everyone and everyone was doing okay and that there was safety on the course. But I was there with my friend, and we were just hanging out the whole time at, 4:00 in the morning now. We'd been awake for 2 hours. We were just standing at this point counting cadets. Definitely not one of the exciting stories where we fly around in helicopters or anything like that. However, that 4 a.m. conversation that I had really helps us bond and become some of the best friends. And I know that we're going to continue to be friends even after we go our separate ways.
Easton, the Hawaiian JROTC cadet, echoed that and added another concept, family.
I would say the best thing that in all of junior ROTC is the fact that it essentially becomes a family.
Okay.
The various teams you're on, you spend every day together practicing. It's not easy. You go from meeting the standards to exceeding the standards, and that's still got to be competitive. So you get really close with everyone around you.
Right.
Those bonds never leave. I've got a friend who lives at Fort Knox that I met there, a friend at Ramstein in Germany, friend up in Alaska. Those bonds never leave. It's been 3 years since I've seen most of them. Yeah. And I still talk to them on a daily basis.
Jake from Texas agreed with this. In fact, he and Easten had only met 3 days prior to our sit down, but more on that later.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I also think with JROTC, you're going to make friends because everyone's doing the same thing. You're wearing the same uniform on the same day. And if you're not good at making friends, you're going to be forced to make friends with at least someone. Yeah. Because you're going to be doing stuff together. I mean, we do a lot of team building stuff. So you're going to find your people and find a place to fit in.
Right.
So another thing, battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
When you are going somewhere, have to have someone with you. Like, for instance, I met this man 3 days ago when I found his backpack in my room.
Oh.
And since then, we have done just about everything in DC together.
Right.
You have to make friends. Otherwise, well, there is no otherwise.
There's no otherwise.
Like,
That's
it is
right.
impossible not to make a friend when you are forced to spend every waking moment with someone else, generally the same person at all times.
If you are a JROTC student or know someone who is, AUSA has money to give you. Submissions for the prestigious Lieutenant General Theodore Stroop Jr. Scholarship Essay Contest are currently being accepted. Open to all JROTC students in the junior and senior levels of high school. Applicants are asked to provide a letter of recommendation and submit an essay in response to the article by Sergeant Major Nelson and Sergeant Major Arnold, titled, "Put Down That Smartphone and Show Courage to Learn." Can you put down that smartphone? You could be one of the top 3 contestants to receive AUSA scholarships ranging from $2,500 to $1,000. The deadline is September 1st, and more information can be found at www.ausa.org/scholarships under the Army Scholarships category. Best of luck to all the contestants. The 4 cadets we spoke to had more thoughts. We then posed the question to all of them. Why should someone join ROTC or JROTC? Easten answered first.
Consider your options.
Okay.
But there's so much out there right now. Not all of it's necessarily reliable.
Okay.
The one thing that will be around as long as America is around, and hopefully that's your entire life, the military will be there. And even if you don't plan on going in the military, the high school course teaches things that you wouldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
You get bits and pieces if you were to do sports, if you were to do arts, discipline, really big one that not really many people think about.
Right.
Drill teaches people that the standards are not the most you can do. In fact, they should be the minimum of what you do.
Right.
Bonds teaches respect, mutual respect, interpersonal relations, everything you could think of that you'd be using in an industry or business or just life in general.
Okay.
This teaches a really good way.
And what about ROTC? Why should it interest people going to college? Georgetown's Catherine answered that one.
I think that people who have a desire to serve and a dedication to that should look into ROTC. I think that there are some people who try it because maybe they just want to have a really close group of friends, and that's awesome. There are some people who try it because they've seen a lot of military movies and they're inspired by that, and I think that's also awesome. But I think the people who really succeed are not necessarily the fastest runners or the people that have the most military tactic knowledge.
Right.
But really the people that come into it looking for a way to help other people and looking for a way to better dedicate their service. And I know there are some people who came to college with ROTC not even on their radar, and then kind of learned that the Army is a place where you have opportunities to pursue a career that you want, to pursue job opportunities, to just get some of the benefits such as tuition assistance. And it's all packaged in this national service framework where the whole goal is to support other people and to help the nation.
And as you were talking about before, your time in FEMA probably helped pull that out because you saw some great mentors that showed you that.
Yes, definitely. I went to FEMA because I had this idea of service as a good thing to do. I knew that I really liked helping other people. I knew that I really liked meeting other people and learning from them. And so as I'm going around doing these operations with FEMA, I'm learning from the people that I meet in the community. I did a lot of community outreach. And then also just from the people that are FEMA employees telling me about their service and their time. And I was like, wow, what you're telling me about your time in the Army is exactly what I've been thinking about. And I just didn't have the words or the job title to know what I was pursuing.
And Kyle touched on the topic of mental health, something increasingly important for people of all ages.
I truly believe in my heart of hearts that most people live a life of quiet desperation.
Okay.
I think people don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have a sense of purpose. And they also don't realize that that's okay, because the person sitting next to you, the person you're talking to, also has no idea. You know, this is the first time you are at this stage in your life. So it's all new. It's constantly changing.
Right.
But since we live in a world where everything has to be perfect, the angle has to be perfect, the picture has to be perfect, the video has to be perfect. Like if you're not doing this at a certain time, you're not good enough. You're not as good as your neighbor or something like that.
Right.
It's really sad because everybody's having the same thought, but no one's having the conversation. And luckily, yes, there's a turn for mental health here, that's been in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years. And that's great. We seek the help, but also put in the work. Because the people next to you are having the same thought. We're all just too scared to say something about it. But if we did and we helped each other out, man, there's no telling what you could do.
More thoughts on ways to address mental health problems. First off, JROTC Cadet Jake noted his father deals with it professionally.
My dad's he's an ER nurse. So he works at Texas Children's, and he talks to me about, he tells me his ER stories and stuff. And he tells me about all the psych patients that they have in the ER. They get them a ton every single day. Like he says, at least 7 of their beds are taken up by psych patients. And he said, and he's going to go to school to pursue psychiatry because he just realizes the importance of it and that we don't do enough for that. And it's such a problem because, he sees 14-year-olds, 13, really young kids in the ER who want to kill themselves or they're self-harming or whatever for a variety of reasons. And it makes me realize, talking to him, just how big of a problem it is and how little we do for it.
Easton's father is also doing what he can to remedy the problem.
My dad previously was on a board to address mental health within the Air Force. And I heard a lot of conversations between him and a professional, I believe it was a psychiatrist or psychologist, trying to discuss methods of improving it.
Sure.
And seeing stuff myself as a high schooler, you hear comments pretty much on a daily basis about some form of harm, depression, anxiety. It's a very big deal. Personally, I spend a lot of time at the ocean, great stress reliever, in nature. And when that's not cutting it, those bonds I mentioned earlier, people will support you if you just speak up. It's really good for mental resiliency, physical shape, which is another thing, PT.
Physical training, you okay?
There is nothing better to help mental shape than just going on a run.
All right.
Clear your mind, listen to music, and run.
Great. That's good.
The 4 cadets we spoke to had more thoughts on ways to address mental health problems, as well as other general Army and world issues. So many that we decided to turn this into a 2-part episode. So next time, they'll be back to chat about the future of the Army and hear their thoughts on a wide range of topics, including what would they do if they were put in charge of Army recruitment.
I think the military as a whole just does a horrendous job being able to paint the picture to the civilian population, to what you get, what you receive.
And yes, social media.
Personally, I use it only to essentially record what I do so I can go back and look on it, say 50 years when my memory's not that great.
You'll hear more of that and more in part 2. We'll talk to you then. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and LaSharon Duncan, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Anthony Del Call is the producer and writer, and Andy Bosnack is the supervising sound editor. Unzinga Curry is the executive producer, and the senior producers are Carrie Barrow-Heckes and LaSharon Duncan. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. I'm LaSharon Duncan. Hope you have a great Army day. Hua.